Lucas Furta dizendo, galera, achando que o Senegal vai conseguir fazer mais 30 pontos.
8 long months. That's how long Caitlyn Clark fans waited for this moment. When she returned to competitive action, suiting up for the senior national team for the very first time, fans were hoping for one thing: a healthy Caitlyn Clark playing her game unleashed on the international stage. What they got, however, were the same old headaches. All throughout the tournament, the coaching decisions, the rotations, the way the ball moved or didn't move. It was like deja vu of last season, giving Caitlyn's fans PTSD. But what Caitlyn did in response? It sent the haters into a full meltdown and set the tone for the 2026 season. This is the week Caitlyn Clark reminded everyone who runs the WNBA. But first, like this video to welcome Caitlyn back and subscribe for more Caitlyn Clark and WNBA updates. So let's face it, the women's basketball ecosystem's been an absolute mess since Caitlyn's been injured. Between the brutal CBA negotiations that dragged on way too long until they finally did what Caitlyn said and just got in a room, met face to face and knocked it out, and then unrivaled ratings dropping in its second season, enthusiasm for women's basketball was losing steam, which made Caitlyn's return to action more important than most people realize. There's no antidote to the WNBA noise than a healthy Caitlyn playing at full speed, doing what she does best. That's the ticket to get fans back. And TNT apparently knew that as well. Shortly before Caitlyn's return, they signed on to broadcast the games on True TV. It's not NBC, it's not ESPN, but Caitlyn would have a national audience. And that audience was about to get PTSD. So here we were, the big game, Caitlyn's return. Yes, it's Senegal, but remember, when Caitlyn and the Fever played Brazil before the 2025 season, that game generated huge buzz. Fans just want to see Caitlyn. So when the starting lineup dropped for USA's first game, Caitlyn, the player everyone wanted to see, the biggest gravity moment we've had in 8 months, was nowhere to be found. That's right, they started her on the bench in favor of Chelsea Gray at point guard. Now, before you say the coaches just started the veterans and sat out the young players, I've got to point out that they also started Angel Reese. So naturally, Caitlyn's fans were already saying, here we go again, with Caitlyn getting the shaft in favor of old guard favorites. And look, I could go either way on the decision to not start her in a return from injury. I've heard arguments both ways, but for many who've been following Caitlyn Clark closely, they weren't having it. And regardless of the rationale, it didn't work out very well because Chelsea Gray only scored 3 points, which is rough, especially against Senegal. But when Caitlyn Clark finally checked in, she took over immediately.
And you can see the pace pick up immediately too. Her command of the team. And on her first 3 touches, she got 3 assists.
Within minutes, the assists were piling up. The passing was on point. Her vision was as eagle-eye sharp as ever. The threes started pouring in, and this was the moment we could all tell the old Caitlyn was back, dare I say, in midseason form. And as many agreed, she looked better than everyone else on that court. By halftime, she had 8 points and 8 assists in just 10 minutes of action, and when it was all said and done, 17 points, 12 assists, 4 of 5 from 3 in 19 minutes. She personally accounted for 38 points. Senegal, as a team, scored 46. Those 12 assists were the second most in a single game in FIBA Women's World Cup qualifying tournament history, again in her first 19 minutes. Now, you'd think after a performance like that, a double-double in her first competitive action in 8 months, the player of the game honor would be automatic, right? Well, nope. It went to Ryan Howard, and look, she played well, had 21 points, but Clark fans felt the snub, and it's hard to argue she didn't deserve that recognition, especially with the glowing review from her coach.
With Caitlyn, she brings this dynamic play to the offensive end. I mean, that goes without saying. And as much as she is dynamic as a scorer, she's one of the most dynamic playmakers in the world as well. So imagine being a dynamic playmaker and then all of a sudden you're playing alongside all these other dynamic playmakers and finishers. I thought she toggled between, the playmaking and the scoring really well tonight and looked pretty comfortable out there.
Now let's say we give the coaches a pass on not starting Caitlyn game 1. But surely, after a performance like that, she'd be starting and be used more effectively in Game 2, right? Well, In less than 24 hours, that joy from Game 1 was gone. Once again, Caitlyn didn't start, but there was a more concerning trend. When she was on the court, it seemed like every effort was made to keep the ball out of her hands. And one of the biggest culprits fans called out was Angel Reese, who had Caitlyn right in her line of sight and kept looking her off, kept taking the ball up the court herself, kept trying to run point forward when the actual point guard, one of the best facilitators in the entire sport, was standing right next to her. Now, there were two perspectives. Some said it wasn't malicious.
I don't think that they were freezing out Caitlyn Clark intentionally. And I definitely don't think it's because of jealousy. It's the way the coaching is. If anything, it might have been a coaching situation and Carl Lawson pulling a Chuck Daly, being like, yeah, we know you guys can kill it in the full court, and just when you're out running, what happens when it's a half court?
Others, though, were much quicker to point out something deeper, the biggest bugaboo for Caitlyn Clark fans, the agenda. And more specifically, that what we were witnessing might be a preview of what's coming for Caitlyn under Stephanie White in Season 3.
Of course, we saw that agenda at work right in front of our faces yesterday during the game. People bringing up conspiracy theories, etc. I don't know what happened. All I know is if that is the offense that Stephanie White's going to put out there for the Indiana Fever, it's going to be a long season.
And can you blame Caitlyn's fans? They've seen too many times where anytime she has a moment, there's some kind of backlash. If it's not players taking liberties on the court, it's the media saying she doesn't deserve credit or trying to dismiss her impact. It's like every time she does something noteworthy, it's at the expense of the other players, which don't get me started on that because all I have to point to is the massive CBA deal they just signed that in no way would be possible without Caitlyn Clark. And while it seems to be fair game on Caitlyn Clark, if you criticize another player, no matter how even keel or objective you are, you're going to hear it.
But boy, oh boy, did I get so much backlash for posting one simple question on Twitter, which was, why does Angel keep looking off Caitlyn? And people went like crazy. And the backlash was from her fan base. But not everything has to have an agenda. It's just basketball talk.
Yep, when it comes to the fan dynamics, we are already in mid-season form. Now, the question at this point was, would the marginalization of Caitlyn Clark continue? Well, we were about to find out. Once again, Caitlyn did not start. She was now 3 for 3 in that regard, but in this game, the contrast was insane. When she came in off the bench 3 minutes in, the game completely changed.
The best quarter they had all game long, the first quarter. Caitlyn Clark comes in, scores instantly. Instant offense. Instantly the ball's moving. Instantly we're finding the open man. Team USA puts Italy in the dirt in the first quarter.
And it became a trend. When she played, the offense was moving. Every time she sat back down, the offense slowed to a crawl. And the game was actually somewhat competitive, which it shouldn't have been. And the team overall just looked so much better in sync, especially the combination of Caitlyn, Paige, and Angel. Who would have thought that putting together the players whose fan bases always seem to be going at each other would be a dream combo that fans would actually love to watch without the drama? Anyway, in just 22 minutes, Caitlyn scored 12 points, 5 assists, and was a plus 27, leading Team USA to a dominant 93-59 win. But even with all the positives, fans were upset. Of all the players on Team USA, only 2 hadn't started by that point, one of them being Caitlyn Clark. And the fan backlash was reaching a boiling point. And because there was really no excuse for not starting Caitlyn at this point, maybe, just maybe, the fans got to the coaches because of what happened next. In Game 4, Caitlyn finally got her first start of the tournament. But even with the start, the rotation around her still didn't make much sense. And again, the dreaded Caitlyn off-ball game plan reared its ugly head. But 4 games into the tournament, with a big enough sample size, there was optimism.
I also believe that they were running plays specifically for Caitlyn to try to play her off ball. But in real game scenario, you know that they're going to have Caitlyn playing the point because it is statistically, you just look at all these games, you look at all the stats, there's no way that you can look at this team and say somebody else is better at the point.
So yes, for the fans who were saying, imagine if they actually let her play, you're right, but perhaps, maybe because New Zealand was no competition for the US, this is more about getting Caitlyn reps. And let's face it, the final score was 101-46. Caitlyn had 14 points, 6 assists, and 2 steals. If they went all out, put the ball in Caitlyn's hand all game, how much worse would it be? And despite all the mismanagement at this point, coming off the bench, Caitlyn was leading all scorers in the tournament with 51 points and 25 assists. And what happened next sent the haters into orbit. Now, Spain was their biggest competition of the tournament, yet Caitlyn came off the bench and moved across positions all game, positions she would never really be in. So, when she ended up with 7 points, 7 assists, a steal, and a block, which is modest, I mean, what do you expect? But even with all of this, Caitlyn put up the best total performance of the tournament. By the time the final game wrapped with an 84-70 win, even with all the misuse and limited minutes, she led the tourney with 6.4 assists per game and ranked 4th in scoring with 11.6 points per game. She was the clear frontrunner for tournament MVP. But when fan MVP voting opened, the results looked a little sus. There were allegations that someone out there was using bots to drive up the fan vote for Paige Bueckers. And this has nothing to do with Paige the player or person, but there's no world where Caitlyn doesn't win a fan vote. So when Paige's vote totals start skyrocketing out of nowhere, it looks like there's some foul play involved. But in the end, much to the chagrin of the Kate haters everywhere, it didn't matter. Caitlyn was named by the media as the tournament MVP, and of course, the haters were livid and promptly broke out the name calling.
It seems like, from the outside looking in, somebody slowly losing their mind. Caitlyn Clark winning MVP, according to threads, has been compared to slavery. Apparently, it is the reason why the WNBA is racist. FIBA giving the award to Caitlyn Clark, which was voted on by the media, apparently is racist against Ryan Howard.
Yes, that's right. Everything Caitlyn wins must be at the expense of someone else and signify something systemic, not just that she's an elite basketball player. And the tears, well, they just kept flowing, because the US's second game of the tournament drew 334,000 viewers. Now, you may not think that's a ton, but wait, that's on True TV with minimal promotion. By comparison, the unrivaled championship game drew 314,000 on TNT. With full promotion on the primary network, Unrivaled's biggest event couldn't top one Caitlyn Clark game against an inferior opponent on True TV. Despite 8 months off, coming off the bench, and not being used properly, Caitlyn won MVP and trounced Unrivaled's ratings in the process. And the beautiful part, we've only just begun. Caitlyn herself only graded her Game 1 performance a B+, where she scored 17 points. This is far from peak Caitlyn, but still, this was the week she reminded everyone who runs women's basketball. And with the 2026 season now a go, with no delay, we're about to see her dominate the scoreboard and the ratings at a magnitude the haters aren't ready for. If you're still here, drop a trophy in the comments because you're a winner for sticking around. Thanks for watching. See you next time.